Pwede ba huwag tayo maglokohan ha? Kanina ko pa kayo nakikita nagbababa, naka-open door kayo eh. Pero pwede ba? Ayoko nakipaglokohan dito ha. Akin na yung lisensya. Akin na yung lisensya.
It's around just gone 5 a.m. It's raining a little bit actually, so that's why everyone's here in their raincoats. This is my first day with Bong on EDSA. This is Season 2 Project EDSA. Right now they're going around the choke points, the known choke points on EDSA, to try and free them up. Now of course the volume of vehicles on EDSA is way beyond what it can actually handle, but the idea is just to try and make things a little bit better, so even if it's not moving fast, at least it's moving. From what I know, there's just over 400 enforcers permanently assigned to EDSA, operating between 5 a.m. and 1 p.m, then 2 p.m, and I'm not sure, maybe 10 p.m. Over here, one of the enforcers is issuing a ticket to this bus outside of the yellow lane. He was in the third lane. They do want to try and keep the buses inside the bus lane or inside the yellow lane. A lot of people say, hey, the MMDA is just ignoring buses, they never issue them tickets. The reality is that what they actually do is enforcement by CCTV, non-contact apprehensions. The reason being is that it's quite dangerous here on EDSA, and the further out you go, the more likely it is that you might get hit by a vehicle. So they do enforce against buses, but it's mostly by camera. Now of course, one downside of non-contact apprehension is that the tickets just go against the plate number, and what the operators do is just let those tickets add up until it comes time to register the vehicle. So it's not really the drivers that are being penalized, it's the bus operator, and because it's not the driver that's being penalized, they have no incentive to change. So that's the downside of non-contact apprehension. Yes, you're penalizing the owner of the bus, the operator, but you're probably not penalizing the driver, and therefore they won't change their bad behavior. Now you might notice that there's more enforcers here, plus they're more visible. Why? Well, this is considered a choke point. This is a known area where vehicles kind of congest and back up, and it causes a lot of problems further down EDSA. So they want to hit these choke points, especially during rush hour, keep them moving, and hopefully keep the rest of EDSA moving as well. Like I mentioned, you cannot fix EDSA, but you can definitely make it better, and that's the goal here. What I've seen a few times already is a motorcycle will suddenly cut across to the yellow lane, see the enforcers, and then cut back. Wow, that was close. This bus and private car nearly collided. I don't know why the private car is in the yellow lane. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos about EDSA, city buses must always be on the first two lanes inside the yellow lane. But if it's a P2P bus or provincial bus, they can use these two. They can also use the third lane. So sometimes people see buses in the third lane and they say, hey, that's not allowed, he's outside of the yellow lane. Well, if it's a provincial bus or a P2P bus, they are actually allowed there. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest things about shooting video here on EDSA is the noise. Some of these buses are so loud that even if I scream into the microphone, you just cannot hear me. So I'm having to choose times when there's not a noisy bus right next to me, basically. I was wondering who that is over there, and then I realized it's Bong. It's funny, head of EDSA, but he's there in the middle of the road. You would expect him to be sitting inside an office, you know, a nice aircon office, but of course it's Bong, so he's not going to do that. Being on the ground is the only way you can actually see what's really going on, and also just to inspire the men, because they're out here every single day, and to have the boss on the ground, you know, also gives you confidence, it gives you inspiration. So for me, it's a good thing. You can see that they are trying to push the bikes into the MC lane, but it's so congested with cars and vans and stuff like that, it's difficult. So here you have a private car inside the yellow lane. They are allowed in the yellow lane, but only for a certain number of meters. For instance, if they're entering an establishment, or this guy seems to be going, well, pretty far. Let's see where he stops. Well, he still hasn't stopped, so maybe he's just using the yellow lane as an express lane. But that is monitored by the CCTV cameras. They measure how far someone goes in the yellow lane, and then they issue a ticket if needs be. For those on the ground, it's difficult because you never know where the vehicle is going to go, if it's going to enter an establishment, if it's going to turn off. So sometimes better handled at the CCTV. I imagine for the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's going to take a while to get people used to the idea of staying out of the yellow lane. So right now I'd say things are going pretty smoothly. You've got the buses in the yellow lane, you've got the private vehicles in the other lanes. There is a blue car there inside the yellow lane, I assume because he's turning right. He's got his blinker going. Let's see if he makes the right turn. That's pretty much the only time that a private vehicle is allowed in the yellow lane. is if they're turning right, either to come off EDSA or entering an establishment. With the motorcycles, they are being waved into the motorcycle lane. They're kind of hard to control because of course there's so many and it's very easy for them to maneuver. And of course they don't want to sit in the motorcycle lane because, you know, it's full of four-wheeled vehicles. If it was dedicated just to motorcycles, like one lane, I think the motorcycles would follow. They would just stay in that one lane and they would be happy. But because it's mixed with four-wheel vehicles, well, this is the effect. It's very difficult to control them and to guide them into the correct lane. Over here I can see a taxi being flagged down, but I'm not sure why. It might be illegal unloading. Let's go see. So they pulled the taxi off EDSA because of course they don't want to add to congestion. I spoke to the driver now. He said, yeah, it's a ticket for illegal unloading. Here's an example of one of those signs, no loading and unloading within the roadway. Although it also says no blowing of the horn, and you'll find those signs all along EDSA. Although the buses still honk their horns continuously, and if you're walking on the sidewalk, they blow your ears out. It's an absolute nightmare. You can see one of the guys has his flashing baton that was issued by MMDA, I think maybe 3 or 4 months ago. They're pretty great, especially here on EDSA, early morning, late at night. And if the worst comes to it, you've also got a stick that you can use for self-defense. Sometimes cars go in the yellow lane just to try and bypass traffic. But they do end up with tickets. I don't know if that guy has any intention of pulling off, but it doesn't look like it. The yellow lane is quick, but it's for public transport. It's to prioritize mass public transport, and some people do abuse that to try and beat the traffic. But there is yellow lane enforcement by Cctv. What they do is they monitor when you enter the lane, and then when you leave, for instance, you turn off, and if it's beyond a certain number of meters, they'll issue a ticket, a yellow lane violation. There are a lot of people that are really following the rules every day, and that's great to see, but there are some that don't follow the rules, and I think it would take a while to convince them to change, but I think they can be convinced, not only to avoid penalty, but also just because it should be better for everyone. It should reduce congestion, it should make EDSA safer, so I think eventually more people will be, you know, converted to the right direction. Now of course when it comes to EDSA, it can be a difficult decision. Do you apprehend on the ground or do you do it by Cctv? Not just because of safety, but because of traffic. If you stop a vehicle on EDSA, it's going to add to traffic. And look, this is morning traffic, everyone trying to go to school, everyone trying to go to work. So you have to find the right balance between educating, penalizing, and keeping everyone moving. And you know, that's the goal, is keep everyone moving. Another thing I can say about EDSA is the pollution is awful. Even within such a short time, you can barely breathe. These guys need some serious protection against this pollution. So the team just passed through another point further down the road, but they didn't stay there because everything was moving okay. They said that sometimes there's a problem where the buses, instead of doing loading, unloading, they actually turn it into a terminal by staying there so long. But Bong said the enforcers there are keeping everyone moving, so no problem. So further down the road to another common choke point, and they'll just monitor it and see how it is. If it's okay, move on. I've just seen this bus pull over and open his doors at Petron. I think he might be arguing with the motorcycle because I saw the bus almost hit the motorcycle. The thing is, they can't really afford for this kind of thing to happen because it can cause traffic, plus it can cause road rage. Like yesterday I made a post about a bus that was attacked. A group of men in a van, they got in some kind of altercation with the bus. They stopped beside it, they all went down and they got big rocks and they smashed the windows. It was pretty crazy. Anyway, it looks like the bus is moving on, so I guess no problem for now. Here's another example of what they're trying to stop, open door, because it entices people to jump on and off. You can see Bong is having to tell the enforcer. It's something that he should already know. Of course, you know, this is a highlight of what Bong has to do. He has to educate those on the ground about what they should be looking out for, remind them, teach them, train them, guide them. You know, it's still early days, so let's hope we can see some improvements. I just bought myself a Mountain Dew from the burger machine here. Actually, I was 1 peso short, but the lady said don't worry about it, so that's nice. So far everything seems kind of okay. Bus just unloaded some people and then they walk through the barriers. They can be given tickets for jaywalking, and then the bus can be ticketed for illegal unloading. it is dangerous because it forces them in front of an active lane of traffic. So to give you a better look at what happened, the bus stopped here, unloaded these passengers, and then they ran across here. So often I've seen buses stop in this lane or this lane, unload their passengers, and then they go down without even looking behind them. They run across the road. The amount of times I've nearly seen people get hit is just amazing. That's why I think the penalty for that kind of illegal unloading should be much higher, because it really does put passengers at risk. It could kill them very easily, and a simple ticket for illegal unloading just isn't enough. It's just too dangerous. And I think I'll buy myself a fluorescent vest because it's just a little bit scary. There's a lot of vehicles moving around. They're going pretty fast sometimes, and visibility is very important. I know the MMDA actually recently gave vests, this specific vest, to everyone. I don't think everyone's wearing them for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't yet get their assigned vest because it was only very recently, but that should definitely help the enforcers here on EDSA, in every area, but especially EDSA. Look, this is an example. They're stopping in the second lane, unloaded a passenger. Fortunately, traffic here was stopped, but if that was still moving, the passengers could be at risk of being hit. Right now they're guiding some commuters to the correct loading place. There's a bus stop further down the road. That's the other thing. It's not just the vehicles, the buses or private cars or whoever, it's also commuters. Try and go to the right place, go to the proper loading, unloading areas, and be part of this solution. Here's one of the Uber Express P2P buses. These are, if I remember correctly, these are Euro 5 diesel engines. Makes them very quiet, very friendly on the environment. Not the most modern, but here in the Philippines it's way above everything else on the road. Second Pascual liner went by, again the door open, driver didn't stop, so I can see they got two riders going after him now. I can hear Bong is now speaking to this enforcer about being absent. EDSA has had a little bit of a problem with some enforcers pretty much going missing, sometimes timing in and then disappearing. I know that chairman's been pretty strict on that. He's been cracking down on them, maybe even firing them. I don't know exactly what action they take inside the office, but I know he's been serious about cracking down on them. So hopefully you will see more enforcers here on EDSA. I don't know if you can see on camera, but it is still raining, although the sun has now come out. So it's wet, but it's hot. Here's another example of a bus with open doors. Like I mentioned earlier, it entices people to jump on and off instead of using the proper loading and unloading areas. There you go, the driver's just closed it because you can see Bong is looking at him. If you're a commuter on EDSA, you'll recognize this as a bus stop. You can see it says bus AC only. There's A, B and C on buses, and they have a sticker on the front. For example, you can see on the front of this bus it says C, so he'll be able to stop there and load, unload passengers. Of course, the problem is that some buses want to load and unload everywhere, not just at the bus stops. And part of that is the commuters themselves to say, hey, I want to go down here. But ultimately, the one who's driving has control of the vehicle, and they're the ones who's always going to take the penalty. Like, see right now, this bus is trying to unload and Bong's warning him, no, go to the bus stop. So it'll take a while, but I think eventually people will get the idea. So of course, this is an example of ground level enforcement. The benefit is that the ticket really goes to the driver, not just the bus. So he's more likely to follow the rules for next time. The downside is that it adds a little bit of congestion while the bus is being issued a ticket for 1 minute to 2 minutes. But then it also sends a message, because this is the first week that Bong has been sent here to EDSA. So it also sends a message to other bus drivers that, hey, you really will be caught and you will be ticketed. So pros and cons of ground level enforcement. So I'm sure many people will recognize this area. It's across Mega Mall, one of my favorite malls. A little bit busy, but it's got everything that you'd like. And you can see the MMDA have installed a fence here to stop people from going in the road. But what people do is they go beyond the fence and then they go in the road anyway, and then they walk along the road to load on the bus. It's very difficult to get people to follow the rules like this. The bus stopping there and unloading, it's not allowed. Over here they're speaking to this driver. Well, apparently not actually, the enforcers just walked away. They need to be a little bit tougher, is something that many people have said, because bus drivers are very tough. They do not listen to enforcers most of the time.
Pwede ba huwag tayo maglokohan ha? Kanina ko pa kayo nakikita nagbababa, naka-open door kayo eh. Pwede ba? Ayoko nang ipaglokohan dito ha. Akin na yung lisensya. Akin na yung lisensya. Huwag na kayo, tatagal tayo dito. Akin na yung lisensya mo. Alam mo yung open door eh. Lahat po tayo sumunod. Lahat tayo sumunod.
Doon tayo sa baba.
Tagal tayo dito. Ireklamo mo kami. Sige na, akin na yung lisensya.
Ayaw po na lisensya.
Akin na yung lisensya. Akin na yung lisensya.
They're still trying to get the license from the driver. This is what I said, bus drivers are very tough. They don't like listening to enforcers. Okay, so they finally got the license and they're issuing a ticket now. I'm not sure they'll add arrogant driver, which could mean he would attend a seminar, maybe.
Yun ang sinasabi ko. Once na binuksan niya yan, bababa yan.
Ganyan po ko nung warning, sir. Wala naman po alam yun.
Hindi, i-ano mo lang ng closed door. Isa lang yan mo dyan. Hindi, sinasabi ko sa
Sir, alam mo,
inyo.
sir. Talaga.
Ang sinasabi ko sa inyo dito, kailangan natin sumunod. Dahil sa pagkakamali nyo, ang layo ng traffic na
Oo nga po, sir.
di ba?
Nagulat ka ako po, sir.
Oo. Eh ngayon ko yung nabigla na may enforcer na nagpapatupad, di ba? Oo.
Kahit sir, babaan nyo naman, sir.
Actually,
Wala-
pinagalitan ko pa nga itong mga to dahil patulog-tulog doon sa kabila. Nandito ang problema eh.
Nakita ko naman, sir. Kaya nalilito kami, hindi namin alam kasi tatalo na yung mga pasahero kaya nakabantay ang konduktor.
Huwag kasi magbukas kasi naman ang control nun.
So here's one of the realities. You can install fencing all along EDSA to try and prevent illegal loading, unloading outside of the bus stops. But you still have to give access for the properties along EDSA, their driveways. And that's where people, that's where they collect and then they load and unload. So it's a very difficult thing. But ultimately, stricter penalties on the buses is what will fix the problem. Because they're the ones in charge of the door. If they don't open the door, people can't jump on and off. They can only use the bus stops. Now, some people said don't just penalize the driver, also penalize the commuters. But the thing is, it's a lot easier to penalize, 20, 50, 100 bus drivers compared to 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 commuters. And ultimately, it's the driver that's in control of the vehicle. If they don't open the door, people cannot go on and off. So just don't open the door unless you're at a proper bus stop. And in fact, you'll see these signs all along EDSA, closed door policy in effect, meaning your doors on the bus must always be closed.